Karl-Anthony Towns delivered the goods against the team that abandoned him. The Grizzlies made a 50-point statement against a Western Conference rival, and all-star voting has begun. Matt and Haize will tell you who is worthy of your ballot consideration. That's all ahead today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts, and we're doing it every day. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network. We've got Matt Moore, and from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Haize. Matt, Haize, a lot to talk about, a lot to get to wrap up the week. Let's start in Minnesota, where Karl-Anthony Towns got a warm welcome from fans, but got some revenge served cold on his old team. 32 points on 83% shooting, 5 of 5 from 3 to go with 20 rebounds in a 133-107 win. Let's go out to Locked On Knicks for more.
I think we can say whether or not you think the Knicks are legitimate title contenders this year, and we could say on a season-long sample, they've definitely haven't been as good as Oklahoma City, Boston, or Cleveland. You could argue coming into tonight, I would have said a team like Dallas. I probably have more faith in the Knicks to have a championship-type ceiling this year, but you can see where Cat, at his absolute best, raises this team to a level offensively they were just never going to hit with the previous roster, right? And Julius is awesome. He showed it. He had like 18 points in the first half on 4 threes. He had 13 points and 2 assists, I think, in the first 7 minutes of this game. Like he was amazing. He just cannot do what Karl-Anthony Towns can do.
Okay, Matt, this was the first regular season matchup they did play against each other in the preseason between these two teams since the trade. And I think there was some suspicion that Minnesota may have lost the trade just based on Karl-Anthony Towns' play early in the season. This game seems to make it pretty clear. How badly did the Wolves lose this trade, in your opinion? Is it sets them back a season bad or ruins the better part of Anthony Edwards' career bad?
I'm not willing to go to either. The deal was definitely made to cut off some salary, but I want to see what they do with this roster. How do they reshape it? Because they've got the opportunity to reshape this by the end of the season. And if by the end of the season, we might be sitting here being like, oh, wait, the Wolves are better now. Because, the Knicks put up a lot of points in a game in December. Congratulations. Do you have any real belief that they're going to be able to hang defensively with some of the best teams in the league? I don't have any belief in that. So, we'll see kind of what happens. Towns is the best player of that deal. There's no question. But the Wolves' problems are more about fit and where some of the guys are at and playing. It's a long season, and trades often go on for multiple years. I'm never willing to be like, lost the trade, it was terrible after 2 months. I'm just not wired that way, Haize.
Haize, are you wired that way?
I think you evaluate trades initially, and then you look at them a season or so down the line, and then you look at them long term when everything's all said and done. But I think if you're looking at it right now, the Knicks won the trade for now. In the short term, they've won the trade. They got the better overall talent out of it, and the Timberwolves' goal, and it per what Matt said, wasn't necessarily to get the better player out of it. It was to help kind of clear their salary and make that a little bit easier. Like, Towns is great. And I think if you're looking at right now, which team would I expect to go further than what they did last year if I had to bet from any of these teams? Yeah, I'm going to pick the New York Knicks. Like, anytime you win a game.
They play in the East.
Yeah, that too. Like, definitely, you add the better talent, you play in the weaker conference. Yeah, you should have the better path forward. But Matt makes a lot of great points about, to see what Minnesota does going forward with their roster is really going to tell, how do they use the flexibility? How do they use what they've gained from the Karl-Anthony Towns trade? But if we're talking about just based off just the talent and how that talent is going to help them just this season, so far, the Knicks has won that trade by far.
I hear everything you're saying. I always love a good patience argument, but I'm seeing some of these quotes come out of the Minnesota locker room, and I'm seeing just how badly losing Karl-Anthony Towns and adding Julius Randle, who is a good offensive player, and yet their offense has suffered so much this season. These quotes, like Anthony Edwards, who had a lot of interesting things to say after the game, but among them, when asked what the Wolves should do to fix their offense, he said, quote, "They're not going to like what I say, so I'm just going to keep it to myself." A little mystery there. Haize, we'll start with you. What do you say? Is there an answer off on this roster, or do they need to do some shuffling? And if they need to do some shuffling, what would you suggest?
They definitely need to do some shuffling. And I think that as far as what I would suggest, I don't know. I don't have the answers. If I did, I'd be a GM in this league. I'm sure. Listen, I could run the Bulls, but I don't know about any other organization. But I think the Timberwolves are just going to have to find balance. And that is a key thing that we're finding out in the league. Like, adding talent or whatever, it's just not about throwing talent out there. It's about how it all fits together. And I think that they, whether they get some role players that help them out or Anthony Edwards takes his game to another level, which we know that he can do as well, maybe that ends up the case. But they do need a scoring punch. They need more balance. And this just is a team that, even though their chemistry issues are starting to work itself out, it's not firing on all cylinders like they were at times last year.
They not going to like what I say, so I'm just going to keep it to myself. So here we talked about. He followed up with John Krasinski of The Athletic and said, quote, "We don't have no identity. We know I'm going to shoot a bunch of shots. We know Ju's going to shoot a bunch of shots. That's all we know. We don't really know anything else." He said, "It's not on the coaches at all. It's on us." This to me is like, he doesn't believe in the teammates right now. And I think the two guys that I would point to are Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels, who's shooting 32% from three. And I don't think that both those guys will be on the roster by the time that we get past the deadline. I think one of those guys is gone. I'll just say this. As much as I'm like, look, we got to be patient. We got to do these things. They need to trade Julius Randle right now. They need to trade him right now. Go find a team that wants to invest in a 2-time All-NBA player and go get yourself some better assets to space the floor and surround Anthony Edwards. You don't need his creation. You don't need the way that he scores. You need a team that better fits around Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert, because those two guys on the floor, you kill. You got to get guys around those two guys until Gobert's time runs out, and then you figure it out from there. They got your Julius Randle right now.
All right, let's move on to another matchup in the Western Conference. The Memphis Grizzlies hammering the Golden State Warriors last night, 144-93, and Locked On Grizzlies host Joe Mullinax would like everyone to take notice.
If you haven't been taking the Memphis Grizzlies seriously as an NBA Finals contender in the Western Conference, it might be time to start, because they just beat the Golden State Warriors by 50-plus points. I'm Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies, and no, the Warriors are not the same that they used to be. That's important to point out. This is not the Golden State of old. They have issues, but the Warriors are a team that are actively trying to make a push in the playoff picture out west, and the Grizzlies completely demolished that hope, at least for one night. And it wasn't the usual suspects. John Morant gets injured, goes out of the game, should be okay, was smiling on the bench at the end. But it wasn't because of Ja. It wasn't Jaren Jackson Jr. as he continues an all-star campaign, or even a resurgent Desmond Bane. It was guys like Santi Aldama, Jake LaRavia, Luke Kennard, Zach Edey building his Memphis legend, standing up to Draymond Green. These Grizzlies are for real, folks. It's time to pay attention.
Okay, hold that great Draymond Green thought for a minute, because I do want to ask you guys about that. But did that win put the Grizzlies firmly on your Western Conference contender radar, or were they already there, Matt?
They were already there. I like this team a lot. That win was Bizarro World, where I don't know what sport the Warriors were playing, but it wasn't basketball. And meanwhile, Santi Aldama went nuts from three, like absolutely inferno. The guys he's listing off, he's like, Jake LaRavia and Zach Edey, and that's great. That has nothing to do with you being a finals contender. Zero. Because those guys aren't going to see the floor. However, what I do like is that Memphis presents multiple solutions to any problem they face. They can play small, they can play big, they can space the floor, they can run fast, they can play half court now, they've got Ja. They have all these dynamics for them to be able to solve the problems presented to them in the playoff series. I think they're legit because of their identity and how those players fit together in different combinations. But last night was more about, God, Haize, I have no idea what the Warriors were doing.
Doesn't Steph own like a pickleball league now? Yeah. Maybe he got caught up in that. Maybe that's what it was. But I agree. Like the Memphis Grizzlies are already on my list. I think when fully healthy, this team is just so dangerous. It can hit you from so many different angles and spots, and they fit so well together. There's some of their parts are better when they're together and healthy, and that's the key to this Memphis Grizzlies team and what they can do in this Western Conference, especially if you're talking about the playoffs. I do think that they may have to get a big in there other than Zach Edey. I know he said Zach Edey building his Memphis legend. I'm not the biggest Zach Edey guy. He's been fine as a rookie, but I think if you can add somebody else who brings a little bit more dynamic scoring there to play next to Jaren Jackson Jr., I'd have them right up there with anybody else. But the talent of this team, the fight in this team, and just outright, this team got that dog. And when they play with the level of confidence, they can beat anybody.
All right, we've talked about cats. We've talked about dogs. I do want to talk about the Warriors. So we'll ask some more questions about this game. Ja Morant, 9 points in this game. Zach Edey, 8 points. They score 144 points in regulation. This game was absolutely insane. All right, coming up, not only that, I want to talk about all-star voting beginning. I want to get Matt and Haize's thoughts on where they stand with all-star starters. Why are we even voting for all-star starters? It's all odd to me. I'll ask all that and more next on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by PrizePicks. Looking to make the basketball season even more exciting? PrizePicks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app, making it simple and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Cash! With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in winnings awarded, it's the best place to run your game and get real money sports action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 player projections like points, rebounds, assists, and you could win up to 1,000 times your entry. PrizePicks also puts its members first with fast, safe, and secure withdrawals, and they're offering incredible holiday promotions like Pixmas, featuring 2 free picks this December and over $30 million in rewards. So why wait? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's episode is also sponsored by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you can get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com. That's rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes, and right now our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team also has a free daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com, subscribe, and stay up to date with local analysis. And you get writing from Katie Heindel, from Mike Shear of Basketball Poetry, and fantasy basketball tips from Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd. All right, I want to hang around this Memphis Golden State game because Golden State, one of the few teams that made an early trade. Right off the bat, they get Dennis Schroeder, who did not have a great performance in this game. Finished with, in 21 minutes of play, finished with 5 points and 5 assists. Anyone want to do a one-game overreaction to the Dennis Schroeder acquisition for Golden State?
I just don't. It was like made out to be like a big deal. And I mean, it's not. Like, it's just, I don't know. Also, here's the more interesting thing, Doug. They pulled Jonathan Kuminga from the starting unit to put Dennis Schroeder in. So Kuminga finally gets his chance and gets to play with the starting unit, and he gets yanked again 2 weeks later with as much as a squeaky wheel as he's been. They've started Brandon Pajemski. They've started Jonathan Kuminga. They started Lindy Waters. They started Dennis Schroeder. Remember when we were on the show and everyone was like, Locked On Warriors was like, this is a title team. And we were like, slow. I'm not going to victory lap too early, but Haize, I mean, this is what we said, man. Like, they're fine. Like, they're not as bad as they were last night, but this isn't a title team.
Yeah, they got a lot that they need to do if they really want to be a title contender. They're a fun team to watch. They're going to win some basketball games. They're going to play great. But for overreaction for Dennis Schroeder, the worst trade in Warriors history. There you go. There goes your soundbite.
Thank you. There was a game between these two teams in November where Draymond grabbed Zach Edey's leg and doesn't get called for a tech. Grizzlies head coach Taylor Jenkins complained about it after the game. Draymond goes on his podcast and calls Jenkins a softie. Haize, is Draymond's podcast writing checks the Warriors aren't equipped to cash this season?
Yes. Every time Draymond opens his mouth, he's saying something that the Warriors can't cash. Like, it's just, we've said it multiple times on the show. It's the crash outs coming at some point for Draymond. I hate saying that. I don't like, I'm not wishing bad on somebody, but it's just the reality of what it is. At some point, because of Draymond, like, not everybody needs a podcast. And Draymond actually has a pretty good podcast, but I am somebody who I think that active players sometimes don't need to talk about things actively going on in the league during the season, because just leave it to interviews, man, because he's definitely going to say something at some point that somebody's going to want to revenge for on the court. And then at that point, it's going to turn into the usual Draymond craziness.
He absolutely screamed in the official's ear last night. And I'm not one to really kind of get into those dynamics. I let the players and officials sort that stuff out. But I will say, from the moment Draymond set foot in the league, I have not understood the leeway he gets with officials compared to other guys. It's not that hard to treat people with more respect, which Draymond just seems incapable of. I'll just say this. He got on the, like, we're back, baby, very early. Again, that takes a long time. You got to be patient in this league, because this season takes 6 months and things can turn very quickly, as the Warriors found out.
Well, the Warriors were not alone last night in taking a bad beat. It was a night full of bad losses. The Pistons beat by the Jazz after giving up a 48-point quarter. Atlanta gives up 133 in a loss to the Spurs. The Suns lose to the Pacers. The Celtics losing to Haize's Bulls. Denver took a bad loss too, right?
Yep. Blazers.
So did the Hornets. It was a trifecta on this show, who lost to the lowly Wizards. Were all of these aberrations, or did you look at any of these games and say, all right, this is kind of the signal of a larger issue, Matt?
Too many days off. Players don't like it when they have too many days off. That's weird, because they need more rest. But if you give them this many days off in a row, then they're disjointed. They come out of the break from the cup and they look completely, a lot of these teams look completely lost. Other than that, I like that Bulls matchup. I'm telling you, Haize, like, I just think the Bulls aren't good, but like any given night, they can be good. Like the Nuggets are the opposite, where it's like, they're not bad, but on any given night, they can be bad. Pistons just gotten too big of a hole versus Jazz. That one got close at the end. Atlanta, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised. Like that team is not good. Like, they're just not. They beat good teams. They're not a good team. This is all about win profile, Doug. Like, none of these teams have a really consistent win profile, and so they could beat any team on any given night and lose any team on any given night. And that's not how the regular season works. You got to be consistent night to night.
Yeah, and for like my Bulls, for example, like, it comes down to the variance defensively. They, over the last like 5 games, have had a respectable middle of the pack defensive rating, but when you give up 121 points per game, it's going to be very difficult to consistently win games like that. And I think that says a lot of teams. Like, we're still in the early part of the season where, like, especially with how many injuries some of these teams had in the season, they're still trying to figure some things out. So you're going to get weird nights like last night where you get teams that win games and you're just like, what? And I think that the last night was wait a second, what night in a lot of cases for some of the performances that we saw.
Austin's vulnerable.
They are.
Oh, boy.
You've been saying how they need to be defended. And one thing that I will give the Bulls last night credit for, they got physical with Boston, and I was surprised Boston didn't respond very well to it.
No, and they happened to outshoot them, too. I mean, that's you got to fight fire with fire sometimes.
45 threes last night. That's crazy.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on it. Make sure to check out Locked On Celtics. He was talking a lot about the frustrations, and certainly coaching staff, Jaylen Brown, very frustrated over that game. Make sure to check out Locked On Celtics. Well, it was a weird night in the NBA, but listen, All-Star voting waits for no one. It has begun, and coming up next, I'm going to get Matt and Haize's take on who they think you might consider for All-Star starters. That's coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action. You could tickle the NFL action too with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That would tickle me. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to join today. You're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thank you again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. All-Star voting has officially begun, and I want to know who Matt and Haize would vote for if they put in a vote today. But first, a couple of quick questions. Why are we still voting for starters, and why are we separating it by Eastern Conference and Western Conference if the actual game itself is no longer about starters or conferences, Matt?
Because it's a notoriety thing. The players refuse to care about the game or give people a quality product, but they'll be very mad if they don't have the opportunity to be voted an all-star starter, especially with the ties of the contracts, Doug. So really, this is just about the players are still going to get what they want out of this as the league tries to get them to give what they want out of this, and the players continue to refuse to give them that.
Haize, are you as confused as I am?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, like I get it, you got to keep some semblance of tradition there, and you would hate for it to get to one point to where it's like you have all these all-stars, and then like two of them are from the Eastern Conference. Like that's what it can turn into. I think that's what the NBA is trying to avoid. So that's why you're still voting for starters and in the conferences. But eventually something has to shake. I think if this format is gonna maintain that they're using this year, I do think eventually you're going to have to change the all-star voting some type of way.
All right, the Cavs have the best record in the NBA right now, but how many all-stars will they have? Let's go to Locked On Cavs host Danny Cunningham for his picks.
Donovan Mitchell should make the all-star team. I think Evan Mobley should make the all-star team. I think Darius Garland should make the all-star team. I think it's very possible that does happen. I think first and foremost, Donovan Mitchell should and will be an all-star. I think he should be an all-star starter. Like all-star is an individual honor, but you're foolish if you don't think that team success drives it to, or is at least part of it. The Cavs having the best record in basketball, and the backcourt decision is not between someone in the Cavs backcourt and someone in the Boston Celtics backcourt, right? Like it's not Drew Holiday or Derek White against Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. You're talking about Jalen Brunson. You are talking about Damian Lillard, and the Bucks have been much better, and the Knicks are sitting in third, but they're 6.5 games behind the Cavs. Like there's just a big gap there. So I do think Donovan Mitchell should be a starter. I think Darius Garland should be on the team.
Okay, Haize, what do you think? Where are you shaking out with your ballot right now?
So right now, if we're going with it, Eastern Conference, I got Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Tatum, and Karl-Anthony Towns as my 5 starters coming out the Eastern Conference.
Trae Young?
Yeah, Trae Young's going to get in there. He's going to get in there. Because of fan voting, he's going to get in there.
Okay. Well, I didn't consider the voice of, 17-year-old TikTokers when I was doing this. But
you got to though, right? Like Trae Young has the TikTok
fan vote.
Here are my picks. I've got Jalen Brunson, Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, Giannis, and Kat. So we agree on the front court, Tatum, Giannis, and Kat. Those are no-brainers. I don't have the Cavs on there, and I hate it. Because, I'm a guy that wants to reward the winning more. I'm like, you got to win games in this league. That's what the whole thing is about. The NBA is about 2 things, money and winning. And it's the only things that matter, and it's in that order. But when I looked at the numbers, and I looked at the performances, and I looked at the records, I was like, Brunson and Dame have been better. Like, this is what's crazy about the Cavaliers is they're so good without any of their singular guys being elite. I think Darius Garland has a better case for starter than Mitchell, which is crazy because I'm a huge Spider guy. But yeah, I wound up with Brunson and Lillard and Trae Young.
Watch him get in. Watch
Well, I feel like the Eastern Conference guard race is like the ultimate test of individual stats versus good team because, again, Boston, they've got good guard play, but not great guard play. It's all about forwards. You've got, Garland and Mitchell taking a little bit away from each other. But then you got LaMelo Ball, who's leading in points scored in the Eastern Conference, but to go along with some good assist numbers and rebounds as well. I don't think he's going to get in as a starter, even though he tops the ballot because they sort it by points scored.
If you do the metrics, I was like, wait, Melo's like fourth in scoring and like third in assists.
Yes.
Like, this is a crazy season for LaMelo Ball, which is going to prompt a lot of tough questions about the empty stats argument, but. I think the East is really tough, but I'll ask you this, Haize. I like the question from Danny. How many Cavaliers have to be on the once we get through all the reserves, how many Cavs need to be on the roster?
3. I think 3 is. I think what they've been able to do, leading the Eastern Conference, the point differential, you got to have at least 3 Cavaliers on the All-Star roster.
I think I agree with you. I just think it's like I don't think they have to start, but you need all 3 of those guys to be on the list. By the way, Jared Allen continues to be the most overlooked Cavalier. In the West,
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to go with Garland, Mitchell, and Dean Wade. Who's your third?
Dean Wade is above the All-Star game, sir. He's not. He doesn't have the deign to play in these silly games. In the West, I've got SGA, Luca, because he has to be a guard. That's annoying to me. We could get I think Steph honestly deserves to be in, but it's SGA and Luca. Alperen Şengün, Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis. I don't want to reward the lack of winning from the Lakers, but when I look at the numbers, man, like AD's having an incredible statistical season. He's got to be on there.
I got Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, and Alperen Şengün.
LeBron.
So we agree on a lot of it, but I think Bron, again, voting what he's doing at age 40, I think he's going to get in because of narrative. Yeah,
I don't mind it.
What do you think about the player backlash to the All-Star game changes? You've had KD saying he absolutely hates it. LeBron was less visceral in the response, but wasn't too big of a fan of it. What do you make of the player backlash, Matt?
We're all trying to find the guy who did this. Hot dog meme. Like, LeBron's out there last night complaining about too many threes and asking about the All-Star game and doesn't like all these types of things. And I'm just like, you are the leader of this generation. You are who all of them look to. You are the single most powerful force in American sports. You are responsible for this. Like, you're the one that didn't want to do the dunk contest. You're the one that has not put a best foot forward in an All-Star game in decades. You can't complain about these things. The players created this problem. The players created it. And I don't necessarily blame them for it because if the owners are going to constantly only do things that are in their best interest, I don't blame the players for taking the same approach because they're trying to level that playing field. It just continually sucks that the fans are the ones that suffer for it.
Players are the one to blame for this. That's just it. The player, like, you guys don't care about the game. You haven't cared about the game. Like, it just, the competitiveness died with the generation before you in the All-Star game. We've slowly seen this happen over the last 12 years. So when you complain about the state of the game and where it's at, like, look at yourself in the mirror. Every player needs to look at themselves in the mirror. It's been an All-Star over the last 12 years, and you're part of the blame.
And now you have to play multiple games. It's not even about one game anymore. Now you have to play multiple games. All right, it's the end of the week, and as we do every Friday, we do our favorite things of the week. Matt, we'll start with you. What was your favorite thing this week in the NBA?
Go to NBA.com/NBA Cares or their Twitter account, and you're going to see all of these holiday giveaways for people that are in need during the holidays. Like, it's a rough time. And what these folks do, I think, is absolutely incredible. The Cavs hosted a showing of Red One, gave away like big swag bags and popcorn with Okoro. Darius Garland was doing a food bank drive. You had Bam Adebayo's toy giveaway earlier this month, where they gave away 1,000 toys to kids in need this holiday season. For me, like, these things are really important. Having that kind of connection with the community is extremely vital. And these opportunities, not only for the players, but for the teams to give back into these communities, I think is really important. It balances out so much of how we feel kind of taken advantage of a lot of the time. To see those players giving their time, which is the most valuable thing that they have, and the teams investing in their communities, to me, is the best thing I've seen this week.
Haize, top that.
I can't listen. That's amazing, and I wish I had that. I'm going petty with my best of the week, but first of all, let's give some credit to Matt because everything he just said is 100% fact, and that's what deserves to be focused on. I'm unfortunately not as evolved as a human. Joe Mazzula and Jaylen Brown being upset by the officiating and blaming Tony Brothers when it came to that loss yesterday, instead of looking at their inability to shoot and Joe Mazzula's apparent inability to adjust to just Zach LaVine and Ayo Dosunmu completely killing them in the second half of the game. That's my favorite thing of the week. I love seeing great teams get frustrated by teams that are much lesser than them, much less when it's my team that does the frustrating there. To see Joe Mazzula almost looked like he physically wanted to fight an official yesterday. That was a great petty moment for me.
Every week I come in here with a favorite thing, and I usually get it around Wednesday or Thursday. And then every week Joe Mazzula tries to sneak in and become it. And it wasn't his frustration. It was his response after the game when they asked him what he said. And he said, quote, "I just hadn't seen them in a while, so just a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday. I wasn't sure I was going to see them before the holiday, and I just can't let a moment go by where you don't wish the best to them and theirs and their families." So, but that's not going to be my favorite thing. I'm not going to let Joe Mazzula distract me from this great article write-up in the New York Times by Tanya Ganguly about Luka Doncic, who is launching a foundation to make youth basketball more enjoyable and enriching, addressing concerns about stress and a loss of fun in the sport. Now, I'm always a little skeptical when super rich athletes start foundations, but I think it is a worthy cause, and I think the NBA needs to address the youth basketball machine more, the wear and tear that it's causing on young bodies that become young NBA players that suffer injuries. I think there's something there, and there is something there too about, I think, the loss of joy, the loss of fun, and I'm glad that I think star players do have to do more to look into it as well. And then finally, I have a least favorite thing, and that's the Charlotte Hornets doing an in-arena skit where their mascot dressed as Santa gave a season ticket holder's nephew a PS5 only to yoink it back from him backstage and give him a jersey instead. Now, the team apologized and gave the PS5 back and a promised VIP experience at a future game. But come on, I mean, off of Matt's holiday experience there and what the NBA is doing for a team to essentially play Grinch on their own fan is truly mind-blowing.
Whose plan was this? This is my thing, is like, who got through this and then we'll take it back. Like, who? I want to know who was in the room for this meeting. By the way, Doug, on the Luca thing, I just have a question. When he was doing all the stuff and working with the kids that have more joy in the game, like, how long did they spend on complaining about the officials and not getting back on defense? Was it like, is that an hour? Did they do that before lunch or after when they give them more slices?
Well, see, but that's the kind of cynicism that you have to develop once you get to the league. What he's saying is have the joy early. That's going to all be stripped away from you once the pressure of the league hits.
Build up that joy. It's going to all be torn away, much like the PS5 was torn away from the child.
Oh my gosh, Haize. I mean, look, a lot of people have criticized the ownership for Chicago, but I don't know that they've ever taken a PS5 candy from a baby, literal candy from a baby.
Yeah, we're not even that bad.
What's worse, Haize? What's worse, Haize? What's worse, taking the PS5 away or owning the White Sox? That's my
owning the White Sox.
Let us know what your favorite thing of the week in the NBA was, or least favorite thing, if you want, in the YouTube comments. Thanks so much for making us your first listen, your first watch every day. Check out Locked On NBA Game Time. They're going to be airing some episodes this weekend. They recap every single game in the NBA. It's awesome, and it's on this feed. Enjoy tonight's action. Enjoy this weekend's action. Be kind to each other, and we're going to see you right back here for a Monday edition of Locked On NBA.